All right, everybody. I think everything's connected. I'm double checking on YouTube. I'm double checking on Twitter Spaces right now, and everything looks good to me. Okay, let's start this. If this is the first time you've clicked on Locked On Brewers, welcome. We do a daily podcast, 20 to 30 minutes max, talking about the Brewers every weekday morning. You can find it for free wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Dominic Catronio. Dom_Catronio is my Twitter handle. I'm the statistician for Bally Sports Wisconsin at just about every single game. Of course, today is an off day, and the Brewers decide to light the world on fire and trade Josh Hader, which is why you're here. You already knew that. We're just going to sit here and chat around. For the folks on Twitter Spaces, I do want to get you guys involved as requested speakers. I do have a few already requested. I don't think I'll be able to get you guys onto the YouTube side of things, but just know that if I do have you requested on Twitter Spaces and I do select you to get it onto the air, if you will, please keep it clean. Please keep it professional. You're allowed to be frustrated. I want to hear your honest opinions, your honest thoughts. Let's just be rational. Let's act like we're on terrestrial radio, if you will. So let's be smart about it. And for the folks on YouTube, you obviously won't be able to hear the Twitter Spaces from the folks that have requested to join on, but it will be available. All of this will be available as a recording in a podcast later this afternoon, and it will be available on our YouTube page as well. So I just want to make sure everyone's good, everyone's hearing me okay, and we're just about ready to rip here. So, okay, let's sit back and think about Josh Hader being traded, which, as I said in today's podcast that released, I don't think it's going to happen. Josh Hader, old takes exposed, if you will. I don't think Josh Hader's going to get traded. And lo and behold, David Stearns and Matt Arnold decide to pull the rug from underneath me and decide to send Josh Hader to the San Diego Padres. Here's the return back from the Padres. It'll be Dinelson Lamet, Esteury Ruiz, who's an outfield prospect, and Robert Gasser, who's a left-handed starting pitcher prospect. Lamet has been up and down this year, a long injury history. We're going to get into that with him. We're going to talk about what's exciting about Esteury Ruiz and some of the numbers that he's going to get to. We're going to talk about why some folks are really big fans of Robert Gasser, a left-handed pitcher who really had a fast rise through the system in the prospect rankings before his draft. He was originally a JUCO guy. COVID made it hard to find him, things of that nature. So the Brewers, in my opinion, just the immediate reaction from the return alone, it sounds like Gasser was the get here. And of course, I'm ignoring the biggest part of this, Taylor Rogers being a closer coming as well. Taylor Rogers is a rental. Josh Hader has another year of team control next year. I'm going to get to a few questions here first, but I want to give a quick thought. I've said for a while now, I believe Josh Hader was going to get traded this offseason, say the winter meetings, something like that. Because it's easier to trade a closer when you haven't been watching games and you haven't been seeing him pitch lately. Let's say the rest of this second half for Josh Hader goes according to plan. He pitches better. If he was with the Brewers, of course. If he pitches better, he keeps things going, his value would rise back to what it was more like in the first half as opposed to what it was here in July. The Brewers may have an inkling here to say, well, maybe Hader, this is the time that they have to get rid of him, because what if it falls apart in August? What if it falls apart in September and there is no value for him going into the offseason? It's a catch-22 because, now he can go and dominate and have 25 scoreless innings with the Padres, and the headlines are always going to be, oh, see, told you so, you should have never traded to Josh Hader. But on the flip side, I think the smartest part about this move is that they still replace him with the second-best closer available, per se. I'm not including Edwin Diaz in that. In Taylor Rogers, who's already been traded now twice this year. That's just a quick thought. I don't hate the fact that you got a closer back on a rental, despite giving up a year of control for that closer, which tells me how they feel about Devin Williams in the future, which kind of seems like a no-brainer. We're gonna jump in. We're gonna jump around. We're gonna bounce around. I want to get to the YouTube chat here. A lot of questions rolling in on the YouTube chat. I've also got my Twitter tweet deck open here as well for all the mentions there too. Let me know if you want some questions answered. But let's go to the YouTube chat here first and foremost. Brandon started things off with a question mark. In Stearns, we trust. I mean, the dude's track record is very impressive. I remember reviewing the Brew had a piece a few months ago, just grading some of the trades that David Stearns has made since taking over. Christian Yelich, obviously, being a very, very important trade. We can talk about Yelich's production at another time, but that was one of the biggest trades in franchise history. Willie last year, Rowdy last year, being not afraid to acquire talent and make a big swing is quite the quality in David Stearns. And he's not wheeling and dealing like a Jerry Dipoto. Granted, Dipoto just made a really good deal to get Luis Castillo. It's going to be hard to judge a trade an hour after it happened, but you got to let it play out. And I know it's frustrating to see a great closer leave. And I see a lot of folks saying they don't like it. Instant gut reaction is they don't like it. That's a fair reaction. I get that too, because my first gut reaction was, oh my God, they really did it. Oh my God, they really did it. This return better be huge. And the fact that there isn't household names, I think, is why there's a deflating feeling of like, oh, they were expecting DJ Abrams or Mackenzie Gore or something like that. Well, there's a reason teams have scouting departments. There's a reason you send these scouts to these cities. And look, MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, Fangraphs, those are opinions just like scouts' opinions. So the Brewers are going to trust their own personnel and they're going to trust their own people to go get their eyes on them. And I think Gasser is a great example of, well, yes, he's in the top 10 of the Padres organization, and maybe the casual fan would shout, go get Mackenzie Gore for Josh Hader. Maybe they value Gasser as a development. We talk about pitchers and what they do in this organization. The track record speaks for itself. Look at the current starting rotation. I don't think the Brewers are looking at prospect rankings. They're looking at their own internal scouting stuff. Let's get to a few other notes here. Mario says, mixed feelings about the trade, but we got a good haul for him, especially for a closer. I agree. The fact that you get Taylor Rogers back while giving up your penciled-in closer is probably the most important part of this deal for the rest of the year. You've got 60 more games, and Taylor Rogers could save 20, 25 of them. I think that's very important to note that. Let's talk a little bit about Esteury Ruiz, a 23-year-old outfielder who's made his big league debut this year in just a little bit. I do have a few requests of folks that want to listen in on our Twitter Spaces. Once again, I'm going to get to you guys in just a little bit. Miller, you've been waiting very patiently. I'm going to get to you in just a second, but I want to remind anybody who's just now tuning in on Twitter Spaces or just now tuning in on YouTube. We're broadcasting in both places. If you are going to, I am going to punch you in to speak on our Twitter Spaces. Let's treat it like regular radio. I ask you guys to be courteous. You can be frustrated, absolutely, but let's keep the cursing down, if not to a zero, if possible. And I want honest reaction from fans. I want honest reaction from how you're feeling. So, Miller, I'm about to open you up and add you as a speaker, and Park Minute, I should say, and YouTube. I'm just going to reiterate what he says in order so you guys can hear it. I know that it won't be live onto YouTube. So for folks on Twitter Spaces, I'm about to add Miller Park Minute. Make sure that your mic is unmuted, Miller Park Minute, and let me hear what you have to say. Miller, are you with me? Your mic might be muted if you're talking. There we go. Thank you very much.
The playoffs or a potential World Series. I think we dropped a guy for some prospect level players that aren't going to make an impact today. And, you know, I know you always have a positive spin on everything like this. And I'm still having trouble justifying it. I know we're a little ways out from when it happened, but and we don't have a game today, so it's going to be hard to see, him come in and save a game for us today and make it feel better right away. But
Yeah, absolutely understood there. I appreciate the thoughts. I get the feeling of, oh my goodness, this isn't suddenly a World Series caliber team. I kind of disagree with that real quick from your Miller. As my thought with it, if you let Josh Hader go without getting a bona fide closer, look, Taylor Rogers is a great closer. I'm going to get into the numbers in just a little bit. Taylor Rogers is very good. Is he Josh Hader? No. He'll walk fewer batters. Yes, he doesn't throw 99, but it's been working for him this season for Taylor Rogers. If Rogers was not in this deal, I'd be feeling like this takes the Brewers out of World Series contention. Josh Hader isn't the only good closer in baseball. Yes, coming into the year, he was probably the best. And in July, it kind of put him on shaky footing. And here we are in August trying to think about maybe it's not going to work out. But I really appreciate that thought from Miller. I'm trying to hold the microphone up into the microphone that I use for YouTube. So bear with me for folks on YouTube. I want to make sure everybody hears everybody. And I am recording this on Twitter Spaces. Here's a quick rant. Twitter Spaces doesn't allow you to do it from a desktop yet. You have to do it from iOS or Android. Frustrating, whatever. Anyway, we'll have the full quality uploaded later today. I want to get to another request. JRW, you've been waiting a little while. I want to add you as a speaker. Once again, JRW, keep it clean. Make sure your mic is unmuted. And JRW, you have the floor right now.
Thanks, Dom. Really appreciate all the work you do. Locked On Brewers, I listen every day as well. For me, so much of baseball is about numbers, right? We go through them all the time. It's a very numbers-oriented game. But I can't help, my first thought was, these guys in the clubhouse, I know Colton Wong said something, I think it was yesterday, about, he expects Stearns to be aggressive at the trade deadline. I just, to me, this was a seller move, not a buyer move. And when you're 3 games up in the division, the fans and the players, it seems like, also expect more of a win now type of move. And this just, to me, I know Hader's been in a lot of he's been in a lot of rumors, as you said, but I never actually expected it to happen. And to me, it screams 2 things: that Mark Adonasio is not willing to fork it over for Josh Hader, which, is okay, I suppose. But to make this move on August 1st, 2 months away from the postseason, when you're in first place, I can't help but wonder, how do the players feel about this?
That's very fair. I like your thoughts there, JR. I appreciate the fear and the understood of maybe Mark Adonasio didn't feel this team was, or Josh Hader was worth the money. Well, let's be honest, too, about Josh Hader. He's going to get his last year of arbitration next year. This year, he's got $11 million in just his second year of arbitration as a closer. You expect him to become the richest closer in arbitration next season. I mean, I think it's going to be upwards of $15 million next year. And if you want to talk about Mark Adonasio not paying and things of that nature, I did a little soapbox rant on Friday's episode of saying net worth and flush with cash are not the same thing. I think it's a fair criticism sometimes. And in Josh Hader's case here, I like I said at the start of this space, I truly believe they were going to get rid of him this offseason anyway. And when you look at the numbers right now for Hader, don't look at ERA for a reliever ever. I think it's a useless stat for relievers. I look at WHIP, I look at FIP, and I'll look at some contact rates and some bigger stuff too. 59 strikeouts in 34 innings is elite. 15.6 strikeouts per 9. That's elite, exactly what he was last year. It's going to get expensive. Strikeouts are expensive. And for Josh Hader, I know it's frustrating to see him go, but let's give Taylor Rogers a chance. He's a darn good pitcher. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his baseball reference here now on YouTube for folks watching there. Taylor Rogers, just reading it for folks on Spaces. Taylor Rogers, yes, 1-5. Don't look at that. Yes, 4.35 ERA, but I just said we don't look at ERA. We look at FIP, fielding independent pitching. Fielding independent pitching takes most of the variables out of play. The 3 true outcomes. We want the strikeouts, we want the walks, and we want the home runs. And the difference between Rogers' FIP and his ERA is 2. He's got a 2.35 FIP, which is very, very good. He's not going to strike out as many guys as Josh Hader. So get ready to get used to that. It's going to be a little bit of adjustment of not seeing as many strikeouts. But on another positive spin, you're going to see fewer walks. He's only allowed 9 walks all season long in 42 games. And similar to Hader, there's a couple of games that have inflated his ERA and inflated his run totals, including one against the Brewers. Remember the miraculous walk-off on June 2nd by Andrew McCutchen? That was against Rogers. He didn't record an out, allowed 4 earned runs. Every closer goes through blown saves, and it happens. It's all good with that. JR, you got one more thing?
Oh, yeah. No, I just, to me, my last thing here was our biggest advantages as a team, besides the rotation, was having Williams in the 8th and Hader in the 9th. And it's just a shame to see that go. And I'm willing to obviously we have no choice but to give Taylor Rogers a chance. And you know, I guess that is what it is. And also wanted to know if you're thinking that it would be Rogers in Devin Williams' old role and Williams taking over the closing duties.
That's a good question, Jay, and that's what I was going to get into next as well. My thought is you put Rogers right into the closer role. He's left-handed. He keeps things rolling as it was. He's got plenty of experience as a closer. Why move him from the closing role to a new team and give it to a guy that, yes, he's done well as a closer in Devin Williams? His career, look, he had 30 saves with Minnesota in 2019, did Rogers. In the shortened season, he had 9. Last season, he had 9. He was more of a hold type guy last year. He did blow a few saves last year, which wasn't what you wanted. He was still an all-star in the first half for the Twins a year ago, and this year he seemed to have really figured it out. He was the guy in second place behind Josh Hader in saves here in the National League. So 28 saves is nothing to sniff at, and 35 games finished this year, 123 games finished in his career. I have no problem putting Rogers there and keeping Boxberger in the 7th, Williams in the 8th, and then Rogers in the 9th. And then, as you need, Devin Williams, maybe he can be a closer for a day as it rolls on. Josh and Marcus, I'm going to get to you guys in just a little bit. I don't want to ignore our YouTube crowd here as well. I appreciate everyone that's tuned in, by the way, to this emergency podcast, Emergency Spaces. Tell your friends about Locked On Brewers. We're on every day. It's going to be a heck of a finish, 60 games to go. Really appreciate everybody that's hopped on here and having some fun with us with some Twitter Spaces. This is my first time doing this. I've always been intrigued by what we could do with this with Brewers Twitter and Brewers everybody. So thanks again to everybody who's come on here, and also want to get a few thoughts from the Twitter chat as well. Tiffany asked, "We need a bat. How does this help us now?" Fair critique, Tiffany. I completely agree. The Brewers have been thought of getting a bat and been thought of, oh, they need to get offense. They need to add some stuff. And, you know, this past week aside, they're off to a 7-2 start. It felt like center field would be the spot that they maybe add to the bat. Maybe the price, when you're talking about Josh Hader and a year plus of Josh Hader, you would have expected to get a bat back in this deal, but maybe that wasn't the intent. And more rumors coming across the mill is that the Brewers are shopping Omar Narvaez right now, who's due to be a free agent next year. And that makes things very interesting because then Victor Caratini would become your everyday catcher, and you would keep Severino despite him not being eligible for the postseason. And that would mean Caratini would have to catch virtually every game, and your backup catcher in the postseason would be Alex Jackson, Mario Feliciano. So I don't know if the Brewers are actually seriously dangling Omar Narvaez right now, but for a bat right now, yes, it is fair to be critical because Esteury Ruiz has not really had a ton of reps this year in the big leagues. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his baseball reference page here just to chat with you. Esteury Ruiz, 23 years old. He's from the Dominican. In 14 games in the bigs, he's hitting .222. He's got a double and a triple. But in the minor leagues right now, he's having great numbers. And I want to explain these numbers. .333 batting average between AA and AAA, a 10.28 OPS, 23 doubles, 13 homers. I had a friend of mine just text me who's in the Texas League telling me that he feels that Esteury Ruiz is the best player he has seen this season in the Texas League before he moved up to the Pacific Coast League. That's high praise. When you see these numbers and when you talk about we've talked about it on Locked On Brewers that Biloxi AA is a pitcher's ballpark and the Southern League is a pitcher's league. The Texas League and the Pacific Coast League are the exact opposite. They are hitters' leagues. I'm not trying to discredit these numbers from Ruiz. It's encouraging to see loud contact from a guy that also doesn't strike out a ton, mind you. 65 strikeouts and 374 plate appearances and 52 walks. So he's only got 13 fewer walks than strikeouts this season. He's putting bat on ball, which is something that the Brewers are really excited about and something that they, quite frankly, really need this season. Is he going to immediately help the Brewers this year? I find that hard to believe, given they're kind of crowded in the corner outfield spots right now between Hunter Renfroe and Andrew McCutchen and Christian Yelich and Tyrone Taylor. I am intrigued to see what he can become after a year of spring training, because as the Brewers elevated Joey Wiemer, Sal Frelick, and Garrett Mitchell to AAA today, let's also remind folks, those guys aren't coming to the big leagues this year. And a guy that's already been added to a 40-man roster this year, his clock has already started, Esteury Ruiz. If there is another injury, maybe Ruiz is the guy they call up as opposed to a Jonathan Davis or whatever it may be. I'm intrigued by that. I want to talk about some other folks here on YouTube. Thanks for everyone's patience here. And then I'm going to get to you next. Josh and Marcus, you guys are next up on the requests to get in on Twitter Spaces. Drum Master Bass asks, maybe these prospects could help us get Juan Soto. Well, I said that the Brewers weren't going to trade Josh Hader, and then they did it. So if I say the Brewers aren't going to trade for Juan Soto, maybe they're going to. I don't see that happening personally with these particular prospects. Maybe Ruiz goes, but you know the Nationals will be calling about Jackson Chourio, who's 18 years old in High A in Appleton. It's been a heck of a rise for Chourio this year. I don't quite see it happening for Juan Soto. And for the folks asking about Joey Gallo, that was a big part of my episode today on Locked On Brewers. I don't like getting Joey Gallo for the sake of Keston Hiura is waiting in the wings after this trade deadline. The roster shakes out and gets a little even to say, all right, it's my turn to be this bench bat for you, because carrying three catchers means you don't have as much room on the bench. Mike Brasso is the only other guy, along with Jonathan Davis, available off the bench right now, hitters-wise, that aren't catchers. So when they decide what they're doing with Severino, that's when Hero would become back up, and their hitter profiles are similar as far as strikeout a lot, hit for big power, can't hit lefties. I'd rather keep Keston Hero than have to give something up to get Joey Gallo. That was see that discussion happening in the YouTube chat as well. Too many Yankees fans getting in there, man. Come on, guys. Let us have this. Let us have this, Yankee greats. All right, Josh, you've been waiting a long time on Twitter Spaces. I'm going to add you as a speaker here in just a second. Remember, keep it clean, keep it cordial. Tell me how you feel. And Josh, thanks for waiting. You are live on Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoy all the stats you add to the broadcast. I think it's cool to watch how you work stat head. Sorry. But I guess I kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying about Ruiz and like the added depth. Do you think that that would add or kind of be a more compelling now adding him to the mix? Like, would the Brewers be more incentivized to possibly trade Frelick or Mitchell in a trade to get Josh Bell or JD Martinez, or kind of add impact bat like that?
I like that take, Josh. I think that the Brewers now, as you say, they have a lot of depth in the upper levels of the organization in outfielders. Are they impact bats immediately to the team? Not quite yet, but they're all very young. They're all under the age of 24 years old, which is something that the Nationals would be really excited about if you do want to talk about a Josh Bell. And a reminder about Josh Bell, he's a rental. He's only going to be here for the next 60 games if the Brewers do get Josh Bell. And then you got to figure out what you're doing with Rowdy Tellez. Josh Bell would probably be an everyday first baseman. In fact, we talk about Rowdy's scoops all the time. Josh Bell actually has the best scoop rate in baseball, thanks to Inside Edge. So defensively, I wonder if the Brewers would still put Josh Bell in over Rowdy Tellez, and Rowdy become an everyday DH against righties, and Kutch becomes an everyday DH against lefties. And when you talk about outfield depth, you're right. There's a lot of it, and Ruiz certainly adds to that. I agree with that take, Josh, that maybe they're not quite done trading somebody in the upper levels of the minors right now. I don't think Terang's going anywhere. I would be surprised if Frelick goes anywhere, but Weimer's got a lot of value. I'd be very surprised if he goes. Mitchell is certainly somebody that the Brewers could trade because when he's healthy, he's produced. The catch is healthy. Is he going to be healthy for a team to acquire him? I've talked about Kyle Lewis a lot or Mitch Haniger a lot with the outfield depth that the Mariners have right now. Well, now Julio Rodriguez is on the IL. Kyle Lewis has been hurt a long time. Mitch Haniger's on a rehab assignment. That's why teams aren't really calling them about those guys because they're hurt all the time. So that's where Garrett Mitchell's trade value gets hurt in that regard. But I think they're all really good players. I'm sure there have been plenty of calls asked about those guys, and I do appreciate their time. Josh, did you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, that was kind of it. I think it sucks Hader's gone, but, I guess now we kind of have to live in a world post-Hader.
Yeah, this is a big day. Post-Hader era has begun. Thank you for the time there, Josh. Appreciate you tuning in. I want to get to some of the chats here on Twitter Spaces. Thank you again for everybody who's tuned in. Brutal, play on words, BREW. Brutal says, yes, the return could have been better, but paying Hader long-term just wasn't in the cards for the Brewers. I agree with that. It's a tough reality for small market teams. I still think we'll make another move before tomorrow's deadline. Is calling up Frelick or Mitchell really that crazy? I think it is that crazy because you are that kind of jammed at the upper levels right now. Let them they haven't had a AAA at bat yet. Let's let them see the best of the minors before we decide if they're ready to come up to the big leagues. Jordan on Twitter Spaces chat says, I like the trade. Rodgers isn't that much worse than Hader. Worse, yes, but not horrible. Now, when you're saying somebody's worse than Josh Hader, that's not exactly a hot take because a lot of players are worse than Josh Hader, but it doesn't mean they're a bad player. That's just me jumping in there. I like the prospects, and I think that this is just the beginning of another trade coming, hopefully for Mancini, Bell, or Happ and Reynolds. On the last part of that from you, Jordan, I don't see Brian Reynolds getting traded. The Pirates have indicated as such, and it has been reported widely by Ken Rosenthal and John Heyman that Reynolds is staying put in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's going to be available. Let's see how that rolls on for that regard. Juan Soto is always going to be the hot take right now. This is going to be a crazy hot stove. And by the way, we're going to be live again tomorrow talking about the Josh Hader trade, talking about the deadline overall, looking at other deals, because this is still the only deal that's really happened today. I'm sure there'll be more wheels and deals to talk about tomorrow. I don't want to go for too much longer here. We've already been on for 30 minutes. It is the Brewer off day. We're going to have this podcast posted later for you as well. I do want to get to everybody that's waited patiently to request to speak on Twitter Spaces. Marcus, you have been waiting a long time. Marcus, let's go ahead and get you on. Once again, a reminder, keep it clean. Tell me how you're feeling about this Josh Hader trade.
Hey, Dom. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate all you do for Brewers Twitter and just for Brewers in general. My initial thoughts to the trade, I was a little bummed. It always stinks losing a piece of that 2018 squad that was a game away from the series. I understand why it had to happen. I don't necessarily hate it, trading an all-star for an all-star. I don't think we're going to suffer too much in the reliever department, but my thoughts kind of drift to what Stearns' motives are, because Stearns can work a deal out of anything. He's really good at putting pieces together. We see that with the Yelich trade. We saw that with Rowdy and such. I wonder if he is playing the long game and trying to get some young pieces. Maybe they looked at the squad and said, we don't think we have what it takes for this year. And so we're going to get some people sacrifice the short-term success for maybe a success of the future. Or maybe he's going the route that he's trying to get some pieces that would look really good in a package. Maybe he could flip these prospects for a big bat. Because really, my beef with the trade wasn't that, Hader's gone per se, but more so I was hoping we would get something to help the offense in the immediate term. This doesn't seem, at least for me, to be an all-in, win-now kind of mentality. So that makes me wonder if this is like step one in Stearns' plan to invest in a big bat in the future, or if he's just playing the long game for success for future years.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus. I see what you're saying. As we just talked about with flipping prospects and trying to think about sending more for an impact bat. I don't think the Brewers are done, especially This kind of sends a signal to the rest of the league that the Brewers are for real and that the Brewers do want to make action happen. And you made a great point there at the very beginning there, Marcus, that it's still an all-star for an all-star. It's not like you're just getting some kid who hasn't proven himself or anything like that. It's an all-star versus an all-star. And that's not a bad thing. Yes, Josh Hader's been one of the best closers in baseball. But if you're going to try to replace him and if you're going to try to make it work without Josh Hader in the future, might as well get the guy that's second in the National League in saves. I completely agree with that, Marcus. That's a good take. And to the impact bat, maybe the Brewers are still calling and these prospects are part of it. The guys at the top levels are part of it. I don't think they're done. I think doing this trade as well on the day before the deadline sends the message that the Brewers are not done. And in my opinion, the more you can add before tomorrow at 5 o'clock Central Time, Tuesday is when the deadline is, I mean, the more attractive it could be to get something. And then when you're going to have all these teams that, you look at the Nationals, there's a lot of pressure. There's more pressure on the Nationals to make a deal than there is on the Brewers or on the Cardinals to make a deal. Yes, the Cardinals are pushing hard for Soto right now, but there is more pressure on them to get the trade right, just like the Reds getting the trade right with Luis Castillo. There's pressure on the A's to get the Frankie Montas deal right or to get a Ramon Laureano deal right. That pressure gets greater and greater and greater the closer you get to the deadline. So doing this deal a day early, in my opinion, indicates the Brewers are not done. That's a very good point there, Marcus. Appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, and thanks for kind words as well. Jordan, you've been waiting patiently as well. Jordan, I want to get you on here. You're a Cowboys fan like myself. Sorry for folks who want to hear about that. Really excited to hear what you have to say here, Jordan. Again, keep it clean, keep it cordial. Thanks for coming on. You are on Twitter Spaces, Jordan. Unmute your mic. It's the little purple button at the bottom. Come on, Jordan. Don't fail me now. All right, Jordan, we're going to come back to you. Oh, you got it. There he is.
So you read my comment earlier, but just kind of, I like the trade. He's not that much worse than Hader, and he, at least, like last guy said, he's good, and I like the prospects. I've liked Lamet for a while. I like it. And then Ruiz, I feel like it'd be pretty good, but I also feel like, I don't know if we'll use these guys in a trade coming up, but I feel like this does mean another trade is coming, which would obviously be good. So just kind of hoping for upgrade there. And like I said, I still want Mancini. I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know if the Orioles trade him. I'm still hoping. But who do you think is realistic to get yet for a bat, if any?
It's a good question. I think realistic is Mancini. I think realistic, I still believe Ramon Laureano is realistic. Things are going to get happening fast. Now, the A's are under no pressure to trade Ramon Laureano because their teardown is all finance-based. Their teardown similar to the Reds in that the owner came in and said, we're going to shed payroll. It doesn't matter who goes where. I mean, shoot, they're shopping Sean Murphy right now, who's still got 3-4 more years of team control. He's a Gold Glove catcher. The Brewers are certainly a candidate to add some pop in center field. Ramon hasn't played the majority of his games in center field this year. He plays a lot of right field, but he came up as a center fielder. I think Ramon Laureano still is realistic. I think Trey Mancini still is realistic. The catch with the Orioles right now is a lot of the Players Association, a lot of Players Union, maybe some evaluators could be really frustrated with the Orioles if they trade Mancini when they're 3 games out of a wild card spot. One of their best players available to try to make them make a push for the postseason. He still has a team option for next year. The Orioles could exercise that option and then trade him this offseason still if they want to keep him around. But Mancini and Laureano are my 2 realistic bets. I don't think Bell is that realistic. It would be nice, but I don't think Bell is that realistic. And a reminder I saw a chat on Twitter and I see one here on YouTube from MVP Nacho about Mario Feliciano. Somebody else on Twitter also asked about Mario Feliciano. Remember, his clock's already started. He made briefly made his big league debut last season. In fact, the Brewers are big fans of him because he was on the taxi squad earlier this season in San Francisco, just seeing how it rolls, seeing how everything rolls, because they are big fans of Feliciano. He's still their top catching prospect in the organization. I don't see him going anywhere. Jordan, did you have one more final thought? I saw you unmuted your mic.
So I know you said Omar Narvaez possibly on the trade block. I did see somewhere else that Colton Wong could possibly, and I'm a big believer in Turang. Even if he doesn't play this year, I feel like he definitely will be starting next year, I hope. So even if we trade Wong and maybe get just somebody this year that's decent, just kind of how you feel about that?
It'd be interesting because Turang's had a really good year in AAA. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here on YouTube. I was just looking at some of his numbers earlier this year. It's been a solid year. And a reminder, he's only 22 years old. He'll turn 23 in November. Former first-round pick of the Brewers back in 2018 out of high school. This year in AAA, as a 22-year-old season, he is hitting .288. He's played pretty much the entire year. A .750 OPS, 6 homers, 16 doubles, 44 runs batted in. He's adjusting to it. He's also, I love the 22 stolen bases as well from Turang this year. And he's still got some seasoning to do, in my opinion. He has come up as a shortstop. And one of the other interesting things about Turang's development, and in my opinion, remember there's a team option on Colton Wong next year that the Brewers can decline and make him a free agent again. That Turang, if that happens, would become the starting second baseman for the Brewers next year. Do they rush him? And yes, MVP Nacho, you just went to the point that I wanted to make. He has played a little bit of center field this season, has Turang. Maybe that keeps him versatile in the big leagues next year. He's played 13 games in center field this season. I talked to a scout actually about a week ago during the Rockies series, asking him about what he's seen from Bryce Turang in center field specifically. And he's a big fan of him. And he's a big fan of the fact that he could probably play center field and he could probably do it growing in the big leagues at that position, which is certainly very, very encouraging. A little bit more time here. We're almost done. This has been a long, long time, a lot longer than I expected to go, but I really do appreciate everybody jumping on here. The recording will be available as a podcast a little bit later this afternoon. It'll be available first thing in your feeds coming up later tomorrow as well. So if there are more trades, it probably won't be current in this recording. TBD if I'm going to post 2 episodes tomorrow. We'll see what happens. But Max, you have been waiting probably the longest of everybody on Twitter Spaces. You are going to be my final caller here on Twitter Spaces. Then we're going to get to a few more notes on the mentions and on the YouTube chat. Thank you again to everybody who's hopped on. Maxwell, you are being added as a speaker right now. Go ahead and unmute your mic and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You got it.
I was just curious when I saw the trade. First thing I thought was, if part of it was getting additional pieces for a potential trade for Bat, and if so, would it have made more sense to try and just get, the top prospects that you can get, or do you think they kind of went for guys that they really liked, guys they really wanted, as opposed to, just getting the best value for the trade?
Fair question, fair point. I think that or big thing to remember about trades, a big thing to remember about how everything goes with what's announced and what's finally happened. We don't know who was brought up on that phone call between AJ Preller and David Stearns and Matt Arnold. We don't know if they said, hey, Josh Hader for, CJ Abrams straight up, or you don't know if they asked for Gore. You don't know if they asked for some other top prospects in the organization for the Padres. As I'm pulling up their top 30 heading into this day, Robert Hassel's their number 1 prospect. He's only in Fort Wayne in the Midwest League in High A right now. He was just a first-round pick in 2020. And another catcher, how Brewers feel about catchers, and Capusano is the number 2 prospect. He's in AAA right now. You don't know if Stearns actually called and said, how about these guys? And they had a list of how things work, of where they rank guys, the Brewers that is, on their talent evaluation from the numbers that they see and the way that they feel about it. And another way that you could see it too is the Brewers understand they're a pretty good team pitching wise, especially in the bullpen. And remember too, they're getting help back via guys getting healthy. Jake Cousins is currently on rehab assignment. Justin Topa, who throws 100 miles an hour, is currently on rehab assignment too. So the thought is the Brewers have reinforcements coming. They get an all-star closer back. The bat can wait until tomorrow. Making this deal today, as we just said there, Maxwell, that, yeah, they're probably not done. And I agree. I think that's a good point to ask and a good question to ask about why didn't they get a bat? Maybe they asked and just couldn't get one. Good question there, Max. I really do appreciate you waiting for all that time. I want to get to a quick point about Robert Gasser. There's a great article from David Larilla on Fangraphs. If y'all don't read Fangraphs, do it. Subscribe. I do. It's my morning paper. I read Fangraphs, Savant every morning. It's really, really good. About 3 weeks ago or so, David Larilla, who's a prospect writer for Fangraphs, caught up with Robert Gasser. And there's a really good Q&A in here. I would encourage you to go check that out on Fangraphs. And a really interesting note about it was the repertoire that Robert Gasser has. One of the guys the Brewers just acquired, a left-hander starter, 23 years old, currently AA, will probably get sent to Appleton coming up here soon. And Antoine Kelly was promoted to Double-A today as well, so that makes room for him there. Let's talk about this graph right here that I'm highlighting on YouTube, and I'll read it aloud for the folks on Twitter Spaces, and this is how we'll get ready to wrap things up. My cutter and slider, this is a quote from Gasser, my cutter and slider both have really good spin. The cutter has induced more vertical and a little bit of horizontal, while my sweeping slider has around 17 inches of horizontal break. That's really good, especially if I can get it on the outside part of the plate and bring it across to get underneath bats. My changeup works really well against righties. It's got good separation from my fastball, and I'm able to tunnel those pretty well on the outside part of the plate. I'm throwing the cutter backdoor off of those. I feel like those pitches emulate each other pretty effectively, end quote. The reason why that excites me, 17 inches of horizontal break. I have this up on Baseball Savant right now. And looking at these numbers for 17 inches of a horizontal break, the company that he is in, the first name that jumped out to me, Brooks Raley and Adam Ottavino, 18.6 inches, 18.3 inches. He is right there among the best sliders already in baseball. Jake Diekman, who the Brewers just saw with the Red Sox, 16.5 inches of horizontal break on his slider. That is an elite number for somebody that has low to mid 90s velocity with his fastball and a cutter and a slider and a changeup. I mean, 4 pitches that scouts are very excited about that are already developed right now for Robert Gasser. Yes, he's only 23 years old. He's still going to be a couple of years away, but shoot, they just got Aaron Ashby signed up. They've got Freddie Peralta signed up for a while, and that's a intriguing thing. And I think the reason why the Brewers were able to get Robert Gasser and Drum Master on YouTube again leads me into this point. The reason they get Gasser is because they're getting Dinelson Lamet off of the Padres' hands with all of his injury history. He had Tommy John in 2018, comes back in 2020, and he was dominant, one of the best starters in all of baseball in the shortened season. But then he has a UCL sprain heading into the postseason in 2020, so he wasn't available. He's been in and out of the big league roster and the big league clubhouse this season. He's been healthier this season, but he's been used primarily as a bullpen guy. He's sounds like take the Padres, take him. Maybe you can fix him up, put him in the pitching lab, get him healthy when he's not expected to immediately need to perform on this team, and see what you have with him next season. I don't mind adding Lamet into this move because it makes it worth it for the Padres to give up Gasser, because now they've opened up a spot to maybe make another move while they get Josh Hader. And I think the big underrated fact about this deal, yes, the Brewers are giving up Josh Hader, but that's all they're giving up. They didn't have to throw in another prospect. They didn't have to throw in another bat or anything. And as I say that, it has officially come across the wire. It is no longer according to reports. It is official. The trade is official. Josh Hader is no longer a Brewer. Wow, what a sentence to say. I don't think any of us expected to say that at the start of the year. It is official. 4 players from San Diego. Esteury Ruiz, Taylor Rogers, Robert Gasser, and Dinelson Lamet. Wow. So looking at this release right now, Rogers and Lamet will join the major league team. Gasser will be assigned to Double-A Biloxi, and Ruiz will join Triple-A Nashville. Then it goes into some of the more notes there too. Really, really interesting stuff. What a day. Padres should be happy with the trade. Brewers are going to be apprehensive about it for a little while. And I get that. I want to see him prove it. I want to see him, Taylor Rogers, that is, he doesn't need to be Josh Hader. He just needs to be Taylor Rogers. And that's what the Brewers are going to ask of him. And a quote in this release as well, Todd Rosiak just tweeted this from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Quote, "The players we are receiving in this trade help ensure the future of the Milwaukee Brewers remains bright while not compromising our desire and expectation to win today." End quote from David Stearns. Okay. Does it make you feel warm and fuzzy inside? Probably not. But baseball is a business, man. It's a wild year. And as I've said over and over, I don't think the Brewers are done, man. I do not think the Brewers are done. What a day. Thank you to everybody who's tuned into this. I mean, we went almost an hour long. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in and interacting with us, talking with us, asking questions on YouTube, asking questions on Twitter Spaces. I'm really, really encouraged by everybody who's tuned in. Maybe we'll do this more often coming up down the stretch. Maybe we'll do this after weekend games as well. This has been a production of Locked On Brewers, and I really, really appreciate all the love that everyone's given me joining Brewers Twitter and interacting with all of my tweets and things of that nature. And more to come. Some really big news coming as well. More on that hopefully later in the week. Not having to do with the trade. Just really excited about where this is going to go for Locked On Brewers and for everything else. But this is going to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody who's listened. This is a long podcast to post, but we're going to post it anyway. Emergency podcast is over. Brewers have traded Josh Hader. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. We'll do it again soon. Let's all stay calm. Let's enjoy the rest of this off day. It doesn't sound like the Brewers are done. And the trade deadline is tomorrow at 5 o'clock Central Time. You can follow me on Twitter at Dom_Catronio. You can follow the show account at Locked On Brewers. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and on Twitter. Thank you again, everybody who's listening. And as I tag every podcast with, once again, keep on swinging.